Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Tuesday Live with my sensei. If you are joining me today, can you please let me know in the comments because I can't actually see if there is anyone on the live with me. I'll give it another few seconds before I actually get started with today's session. Okay, I'm going to get started. Just add my slides to the screen. There we go. So hello from me. It's good to have you here if you are here with me today. So the topic of today is looking at shaping the atmosphere. So we will be starting off by looking at a framework, which is a strategic management tool that is used to assess the internal resources and also the capabilities of the organization. And it's all tied into competitive advantage. So RIO is an acronym and it just stands for, is it valuable? So do the resources and capabilities add any value? Is it rare? So is it are those resources and capabilities difficult to find in the market or in the industry? Can it be easily imitated? So can competitors actually imitate the resources and capabilities that you have? And are you organized? So is the organization organized enough to be able to use those resources and capabilities to be able to exploit them to achieve competitive advantage? So why I started off with that is because I want to look at organization in particular. So these LinkedIn lives are only about 15 minutes, so we haven't really got an opportunity to do a deep dive. It's really just scratching the surface. So, looking at leadership and how leaders actually affect an organization. So, again, I warned you last week in my LinkedIn Live that I'm going to be using quotes by Deming and General Sun Tzu a lot. So, this is one of my favorites from Deming, which is your system is perfectly designed to give you the results that you're getting, or an organization is perfectly designed for the results that you're getting. So when you actually looking at it in terms of are you happy with the results? With the performance of your productivity or your profitability. If you go back to the design, you'll usually find where the problems or the challenges actually exist. Now, one of the main areas that can become problematic is the organizational culture. And I'm going to be touching on each of these areas here. So, looking at the environment and atmosphere, compensation, standards and policies, the people, leadership, and also organization. You might be wondering why I've got the chap in the corner there of the screen. You might recognize him from last week's slides. Just He's got a great vibe, so I thought I'll keep them there. It makes me happy to keep them there, so I've kept him there. So let's look at the hierarchical structure. So most of you have seen this before. So you've got the pyramid where at the very top you've got the strategic levels. So that's the CEO and the executives, so where the top leadership is. Then you've got the tactical level, who are the supervisors or the middle managers, and they are the ones that will manage the operational level, which are the employees and the line workers. Now, why it's in a pyramid, if you haven't actually come across this before, is that usually it is also an indication of how many people you will actually have in those different areas. So at the very top, it's like, the very top of the pyramid is the smaller bit, and that's because you don't tend to have a very kind of like a fat structure where you've got a lot of executives or more than one CEO, and then it goes down from there. So the operational level and the employees and line workers, frontline workers, are the biggest group that usually exists within an organization. So, leaders set the climate and culture in the workplace. And studies, the last time I looked, were actually saying that they can impact the climate and culture by up to 70%. Now, that's staggering. That's a huge amount. So, they have great impact in what the organization is actually going to be like. So, culture is really the environment where people in your organization thrive. So you want to make sure that you are creating an environment where they thrive, where they buy into your vision, where they're doing valuable work, and also they're feeling valued for the work that they are providing. Let's look at where some of it goes wrong. So I have a question for you, which is, they say babies cry for it and men die for it, or grown men die for it. What is it? So if there's anyone on the lives, if you want to take a guess in the comments and put down what you think that is. If not, it's okay. I'll continue. So what that actually is recognition or praise. So babies cry for it and grown men actually die for it as well. So what would that actually look like? So everything that you do as a leader has a ripple effect in the organization. So we don't just build businesses, we also are cultivating environments. So every decision that you make, every action that you take, it has a ripple effect through the organization. So what you celebrate actually becomes the culture. So again, remember, just tying it back to the recognition there. So I've put down two areas. One is on performance punishment, where we can actually get this wrong as leaders by recognizing behavior that maybe don't fit with the values of the organization. So I'll give you an example of that. I saw a case study recently where there was an organization, and if you listen to the podcast that I have, Ria, thank you very much for the comment. So if you listen to the podcast that was streamed yesterday, I mentioned the case study where there was an organization where they had two members of staff. One was very efficient and ended up having to work until like 2 a.m. every morning because they just couldn't get their work done. And there was another one who, because of other commitments that they had outside of the workplace, actually found that they were in a situation where they had to be efficient. They had to make sure that they could finish at 5 o'clock to catch their tube back home because they had commitments and needed to be there by 6 o'clock. And the leader used to come in the morning and actually give praise to the employee that was staying at work until 2 a.m., saying, look at this guy, how loyal is he to the organization because he's staying on until 2 a.m. and, is working hard. And, and ignoring the fact that this could have been as a result of inefficiency. And you had the other employee who was actually, trying to be efficient, trying to, stick to making sure that their performance was always in expectations and in line with the objectives of the organization, was being ignored. And another area that I wanted to touch on was making the invisible visible, and that's a really good skill for a leader to have. Now, again, tying it back to the recognition and praise. So if we are all striving to get recognition, it's very hard to do the things where you have no visibility for. So no one actually recognizes the work that you're actually doing and the contribution that you're making to the organization. And good leaders have ways in which they are able to make that invisible work visible so that people in the organization will strive to actually do it so that they can gain the recognition for that. And I'm just going to put Ria's comment on there. So leaders should design cultures that encompass the needs of everyone, not just set the culture according to their own preferences for culture, which unfortunately can be the go-to for leaders. And you're absolutely right on that. And we're going to be touching on that in a couple more slides, where we'll be looking at the actual design and what we need to be doing to create the design that we actually want. So I'm sure you've all heard this before, where they say, go where you're celebrated. So if you're an employee for an organization, you want to make sure that, you are in an environment where you are feeling that you are valuable and you are also valued. The worst thing that you can do is where you feel like your contribution is meaningful to the organization, but the organization doesn't value you. And that could be tied into compensation, that could be tied into the way that they are recognizing the work that you actually do. Are you being celebrated for it? Or is it just being ignored? Is it invisible? Now, I saw this in a Turkish movie that I'd actually watched, and it was like two armies that were fighting each other. And I just thought that, it was really meaningful. It kind of resonated with me in regards to leadership and climate and culture. And one of the army generals had said, the best way to win a war, if you're fighting an enemy, is to cut the feet, because the body will fall. And if you go back to the hierarchical structure that I had shared at the beginning of this live, I done that deliberately, because you can see that the bottom layer, where most of the people in the organization that are actually driving the results and creating the outputs, whatever they may be, are the biggest segment. And they are the feet of the organization, and they're the ones that are actually holding it up. So if you don't take the time to make sure that you are creating the right culture, you're celebrating the right things, and you are in effect, harming the feet, then eventually the body will actually fall. You'll find that the organization will be problematic, and that's my alarm going to say that I've already reached 13 minutes. I don't know how that's possible at all. So we can do things by design or default. So default, like Ria was actually saying, is, leaders need to set the culture in the organization, and not just do it by default, which would be, basically designed on their own preference. They actually need to take consideration of what will be the right environment for their employees to be as productive, and for all levels of the organization, actually. So making sure that they are creating a culture that is conducive towards achieving that productivity, because leaders need to be very careful about things that, for example, what they allow, what you condone, because you are signaling to the organization what you actually recognize or celebrate, and also things that you consistently do as well. Those kind of things are what will actually eventually form the culture and will be replicated by the people that are working in the organization. So we want to have order and not chaos. And you can see that little skeleton that I put there, only because, I wanted to make this slide a little bit brighter. But yes, so, if you don't plan for something, like I mentioned last week, planning is a yardstick for control. If you haven't planned it, you can't control it. So you'll end up with chaos. Or you could choose to have order. You could choose to create the design, and there are many different kind of frameworks or models that are available in terms of what you could do to create the right kind of culture, the right climate within the organization. It's beyond the scope of today's session to actually go through them. We are scratching the surface today, like I had said. So be careful of what you allow. And the reason why I've included this slide is because even though you might think that you're a good leader, if you're also not taking stock of the people that you have in management positions, so like your executives or your supervisors and middle management and line managers, if you're turning a blind eye to what they are doing and you are allowing things to happen, that will also lead to creating the culture. So, you can't be passive with it. because even though it may not be your fault, it is your responsibility. If you are the one that is impacting 70% of the company culture and climate, it is your responsibility. So you need to also be checking that the values that you've designed and the kind of like way that you want the company culture to be is actually cascading down through the organization, and everyone is actually doing things that will actually help it and not harm it. So before I go into the vibe check, no, actually we'll go into the vibe check because I think I'm down to like a minute that's left. So I'm going to ask you a question here. And it's something that my mother always says: some people light up the room when they walk in, and some when they walk out. Which one are you? And I think this is something that we need to do, especially if we are leaders and we are influential, is to do a vibe check before you actually show up to places. If you're having a really tough time at work, or you're having a bad day, your energy can basically suck the energy out of the rest of the room. So how you turn up and how you show up basically will determine what kind of like climate you actually bring with you. And I'm just going to bring Ria's comment on here quickly. I know we're running out of time. So managers are both the most neglected part of the structure, despite also being the problem. They are the problem because there is not enough attention given to their education for producing positive productivity. And Ria, you're absolutely right. One of the things that happen is that people usually go into management positions because they've been promoted, and sometimes that promotion doesn't actually come with any training on how to be a manager, and it just, as they go up the ladder, it just compounds. So making sure that they are given adequate training is going to be key, to make sure that they are producing that positive productivity. Right. So I think that I've just gone over 15 minutes again. I'll get it right eventually. So practice gains mastery. And just want to ask a question before we end the session. Did you find this live informative? Please answer with a yes or no in the comments. Okay. So I want to thank you all, and please do join me again. So it's every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Following BST at the moment, because we are in, I think, nearing summer now, and hope to see you again. Thank you very much, everyone.